The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the nursery floor, where Princess Charlotte played quietly with her dolls. Kate, the Princess of Wales, watched her daughter from the doorway, a gentle smile playing on her lips. At 8 years old, Charlotte had grown into a thoughtful and observant child, often surprising her parents with her mature insights and careful attention to the world around her. Kate had noticed something different about Charlotte in recent weeks. The usually cheerful princess had become quieter, more contemplative. She would often pause during conversations, as if carefully choosing her words, and Kate had caught her staring out of windows with a distant expression that seemed far too serious for a child her age. On this particular morning, Kate decided to join Charlotte on the floor, settling down beside her daughter with practiced grace. The little princess looked up, offering a small smile before returning her attention to the doll she had arranged in a careful semicircle. "What are you playing, darling?" Kate asked softly, reaching out to smooth a strand of Charlotte's dark hair. Charlotte paused, considering her answer. "They're having a meeting," she said finally, "about important things." Kate felt a flutter of concern. Even in play, Charlotte seemed burdened by something weighty. "What kind of important things?" The princess moved one of the dolls forward, making it speak in a tiny voice. "About keeping secrets," she said. "Sometimes grown-ups think children don't see things, but we do." The words sent a chill down Kate's spine. She maintained her composure, years of royal training allowing her to keep her expression neutral even as her mind raced. "Charlotte, sweetheart, is there something you'd like to talk to me about?" Charlotte continued playing, but Kate noticed how her small hands trembled slightly as she moved the dolls. "Mummy, why do people sometimes say mean things when they think no one is listening?" Kate's heart began to beat faster. She knew her daughter had been exposed to the public eye from birth, but she and William had worked tirelessly to shield their children from the harsher realities of royal life. They had created a bubble of normalcy within the palace walls, or so they had thought. "What kind of mean things, darling?" Kate asked, keeping her voice gentle and encouraging. Charlotte set down the doll she was holding and looked directly at her mother. In that moment, Kate saw not a little girl, but someone who had witnessed something that had fundamentally changed her understanding of the world. "At the garden party," Charlotte began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last month, when I went to find James because he had wandered off, I heard them talking about us, about our family." Kate remembered the garden party well. It had been a typical royal engagement, with hundreds of guests milling about the palace grounds. The children had been allowed to attend for a short while, a treat that they had been excited about for weeks. Kate had been occupied with greeting guests when James, her youngest, had decided to explore. Charlotte, ever the responsible big sister, had gone to find him. "Who was talking, sweetheart?" Kate asked, though she dreaded the answer. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears that she bravely tried to blink away. "Some ladies in fancy hats. They were standing by the rose garden, and they didn't see me because I was behind the hedge looking for James." Kate reached out and pulled Charlotte into her lap, holding her close. "It's okay, my darling. You can tell me anything." The little princess buried her face in her mother's shoulder for a moment before continuing. "They said terrible things, Mummy. About you, about Daddy, about all of us. They said that we weren't good enough. That you weren't good enough." Kate felt her own eyes burning with unshed tears. She had faced criticism before, had learned to develop a thick skin against the occasional harsh comment or unflattering article. But knowing that her daughter had been exposed to such cruelty, had heard such things while innocently looking for her brother, broke her heart in a way she hadn't expected. "What else did they say?" Kate asked, though every maternal instinct screamed at her to stop, to protect Charlotte from having to relive the moment. Charlotte pulled back slightly, looking at her mother with those wise, sad eyes. "They said you were just pretending, that you didn't belong in our family. They laughed about your clothes, about how you talk, about everything. They said Granny would be disappointed." Kate felt as if she'd been physically struck. References to Diana, William's late mother, were always particularly painful. The constant comparisons, the suggestions that she could never measure up to the beloved princess who had died so tragically young, were wounds that never fully healed. And then Charlotte continued, her voice growing even smaller. They talked about me and George and Louis. They said we would never be as good as other royal children, that we were too common. The dam finally broke, and Kate felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly, not wanting to upset Charlotte further. But the little princess reached up with her small hand and gently touched her mother's wet cheek. "Don't cry, Mummy," Charlotte said. "I didn't believe them. I know you're the best mummy in the world. And Daddy always says you're the strongest person he knows." Kate pulled Charlotte close again, holding her tightly as she struggled to regain her composure. Her mind was reeling with a mixture of rage, hurt, and fierce protectiveness. How dare anyone speak so cruelly, especially where a child might hear? And what damage had been done to Charlotte's innocent view of the world? "Charlotte," Kate said when she finally found her voice, "I need you to know that what those ladies said was wrong. Sometimes people say hurtful things because they're unhappy themselves or because they don't understand. It has nothing to do with who we really are." Charlotte nodded against her mother's chest. "I know, Mummy, but it still made me sad. And I've been thinking about it a lot. Sometimes at school, I hear other things too. Not about us specifically, but about people being mean to each other. It makes me wonder why people choose to be unkind when it's just as easy to be nice." Kate marveled at her daughter's wisdom, even as her heart ached. Charlotte had always been perceptive, but this experience had clearly accelerated her understanding of human nature in ways that no parent would wish for their child. "You're right," Kate said. "It is just as easy to be kind. And that's why we must always choose kindness, even when others don't. That's what makes us who we are, not what anyone else says about us." They sat together for a while longer, Kate holding Charlotte and Charlotte clutching her favorite doll. The morning sun had shifted, now illuminating a different corner of the nursery, and Kate found herself thinking about all the conversations she'd had in this room over the years. Teaching George about responsibility, helping Louis with his letters, and now this, perhaps the most important conversation of all. "Mummy," Charlotte said eventually, "I didn't tell Daddy because I didn't want him to be sad too. He works so hard, and I see how tired he gets sometimes. I thought if I just kept it inside, it would be okay." Kate felt a fresh wave of tears threaten. The burden her 8-year-old daughter had been carrying, the desire to protect her parents even as she grappled with her own confusion and hurt, was almost too much to bear. "Oh, my darling girl," Kate said, "you never have to protect us from the truth. Daddy and I are here to protect you, not the other way around. And keeping difficult things inside doesn't make them go away. It just makes them feel bigger and scarier." Charlotte considered this. Like when Louis was afraid of the monster under his bed, and Daddy showed him there was nothing there. Exactly like that, Kate agreed. When we shine a light on our fears and worries, when we share them with people who love us, they become much less frightening. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Louis burst into the nursery, his face flushed with excitement. "Mummy, Charlotte, come see. There's a butterfly in the garden, and it's enormous." The spell was broken, and Charlotte smiled a real smile this time. She scrambled to her feet, ready to follow her brother on his adventure. But before she ran off, she turned back to Kate. "Mummy, I love you, and I think you're perfect just the way you are." Kate managed to smile through her tears. "I love you too, my darling, more than all the stars in the sky." As the children raced off to investigate Louis's butterfly, Kate remained on the nursery floor for a moment longer. She knew she would have to tell William about this conversation, knew they would need to discuss how to better protect their children from the harsh realities of public life. But she also felt a strange sense of pride. Charlotte had shown remarkable strength and emotional intelligence in how she'd processed what she'd overheard. Rising to her feet, Kate walked to the window and looked out at the garden where her children were now chasing butterflies with carefree abandon. She thought about the women at the garden party, their cruel words spoken so carelessly, never imagining that a little princess might be listening. She thought about all the times she'd smiled through similar comments, maintaining her composure for the sake of the institution she'd married into. But this was different. This had touched her child, and that changed everything. Kate had learned many things since becoming a member of the royal family. She had learned protocol and patience, grace under pressure, and the art of the perfect wave. But perhaps the most important thing she had learned was that her children's emotional well-being mattered more than any tradition or public perception. As she watched Charlotte help Louis catch sight of another butterfly, pointing excitedly and laughing when it fluttered just out of reach, Kate made a decision. She would not let this incident define her daughter's understanding of the world. Instead, she would use it as an opportunity to teach all her children about resilience, about the power of kindness in the face of cruelty, and about the importance of staying true to oneself regardless of what others might say. The tears on her cheeks had dried, but the fierce protectiveness in her heart burned brighter than ever. She thought about the conversation she would need to have with William, with their staff, perhaps even with the Queen. Changes would need to be made to ensure that her children were better shielded from such encounters in the future. But for now, she had a butterfly to admire and children to cherish. Kate smoothed her skirt and headed for the garden, ready to join in the simple joy of a morning's adventure. As she walked, she heard Charlotte's laughter ring out, clear and true, and felt a surge of hope. Her daughter had witnessed something no child should have to hear, but she had also shown remarkable strength in how she'd processed it. And in sharing her burden, she had allowed healing to begin. It was a reminder that even in the most challenging moments, there is always the possibility of growth, of deeper connection, and of love triumphing over hurt. The butterfly investigation turned into an impromptu natural history lesson, with Kate teaching the children about different species and their life cycles. George joined them, adding his own encyclopedic knowledge gleaned from his favorite nature books. As they explored the garden together, Kate found herself thinking about transformation, how butterflies emerged from cocoons completely changed, beautiful in their new form. Perhaps this painful experience could be Charlotte's cocoon moment, she thought. A difficult passage that would ultimately lead to greater strength and wisdom. It wasn't what any mother would choose for her child, but Kate had learned that sometimes the most profound growth came from the most challenging experiences. As the morning wore on, William appeared in the garden, having finished his morning meetings. He took in the scene. His family gathered around a flowering bush, the children animated and engaged and smiled. But Kate caught his eye, and he immediately sensed that something had happened. She gave him a small nod, a silent promise that they would talk later. For now, though, he simply joined them, lifting Louis onto his shoulders for a better view of a particularly elusive butterfly. Charlotte slipped her hand into Kate's, and Kate squeezed it gently, a wordless reminder of their earlier conversation and the bond they shared. "Did you know," Charlotte said suddenly, addressing her brothers, "that butterflies can't see their own wings? They never know how beautiful they are." "That's rather sad," George observed. "I don't think so," Charlotte replied thoughtfully. "Maybe it means that being beautiful isn't about knowing it yourself. Maybe it's about making the world more beautiful just by being in it." Kate and William exchanged glances over their daughter's head, both struck by the profundity of her words. William reached out and took Kate's free hand, linking their family together in a chain of love and support. "You know what I think?" William said. "I think we're the luckiest family in the world. Not because of where we live or what we have, but because we have each other. Even luckier than the Beckhams." Louis asked from his perch on William's shoulders, making everyone laugh. "Even luckier than the Beckhams," William confirmed solemnly. As they made their way back inside for lunch, Kate felt a sense of peace settling over her. The morning had brought unexpected pain, but also unexpected grace. Charlotte's secret was no longer a burden she carried alone, and in the sharing, its power to hurt had been diminished. There would be more conversations to come, more tears perhaps, and certainly more challenges as the children grew older and became more aware of the unique pressures of their position. But There'd also be more butterfly mornings, more moments of profound wisdom from small voices, and always the unbreakable bond of family love. The incident at the garden party had revealed an ugly truth about some people's capacity for cruelty. But Charlotte's response had revealed something far more powerful: the capacity of a child's heart to process pain with wisdom, to choose love over bitterness, and to find beauty even in difficult moments. As Kate helped serve lunch, watching her children chatter and tease each other with the casual affection of siblings, she thought about the tears she had shed that morning. They had been tears of pain, yes, but also tears of recognition. Recognition of her daughter's strength, of the depth of their bond, and of the fierce love that would always protect her children, even when she couldn't shield them from every harsh word or unkind thought. The conversation in the nursery had been a turning point, Kate realized, not just in her understanding of what Charlotte had experienced, but in her approach to motherhood within the royal framework. She had always tried to balance duty with love, protocol with warmth. But now she knew that when push came to shove, her children's emotional well-being would always come first. The afternoon brought its usual activities: homework supervision, music practice, and preparation for evening engagements. But underneath the familiar routine, something had shifted. Charlotte seemed lighter, more like her usual self, as if sharing her secret had lifted a weight from her small shoulders. She practiced her piano with enthusiasm, helped Louis with his reading, and engaged in a spirited debate with George about whether dragons could have existed alongside dinosaurs. As the day drew to a close, Kate found herself back in the nursery, this time with William beside her. The children were in bed, and she had just finished telling him about her conversation with Charlotte. His reaction had been much as she'd expected: a mixture of anger at the women who had spoken so carelessly, pain for what Charlotte had overheard, and pride in how their daughter had handled it. "We need to do better," William said quietly. "At protecting them, I mean. I know we can't shield them from everything, but Charlotte should never have been in a position to overhear something like that." Kate nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. Perhaps we need to review our security arrangements for family events. Not just physical security, but emotional security, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," William assured her. "Our children deserve to have as normal a childhood as possible, given our circumstances. And that means being able to play in a garden without hearing adults say cruel things about their family." They talked long into the evening, making plans and discussing strategies. But more than the practical considerations, they talked about Charlotte herself, her remarkable resilience, her emotional intelligence, and the way she had tried to protect them from her own pain. "She gets that from you," William said at one point. "That strength, that instinct to protect others even when you're hurting yourself." Kate leaned against him, finding comfort in his presence. "I just wish she didn't have to be strong. Not yet. She's only 8 years old." "I know," William said softly. "But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The conversation you had with her today about choosing kindness, about not letting others' words define us, those are lessons that will serve her well throughout her life. And she'll always remember that when she needed you, you were there. That when she shared her burden, you helped her carry it." As they finally prepared for bed, Kate looked in on each of the children one more time. Louis was sprawled across his bed, one arm flung out, and his favorite toy car clutched in his other hand. George was neat, even in sleep, his covers barely disturbed. And Charlotte was awake, watching as Kate peered around her door. "Mummy," she whispered. Kate entered the room and sat on the edge of Charlotte's bed. "Yes, darling. I'm glad I told you," Charlotte said simply. "It feels better now." Kate smoothed her daughter's hair. "I'm glad you told me too. And remember, you can always come to me or Daddy with anything that's troubling you. That's what we're here for." Charlotte nodded sleepily. "Mummy, those ladies were wrong, about everything they said. We are good enough. We're more than good enough. We're a family, and that's the most important thing." "Yes, my darling," Kate whispered, kissing Charlotte's forehead. "That's exactly right. We're a family, and nothing anyone says can change that." As Charlotte drifted off to sleep, Kate remained for a moment longer, watching her daughter's peaceful face. The day had begun with sunshine and ended with starlight, and in between had come tears, revelations, and ultimately a deeper understanding between mother and child. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for both joy and difficulty. The life they led, in the public eye and under constant scrutiny, would never be easy. But as Kate finally made her way to her own room, she carried with her the knowledge that their family bonds were strong enough to weather any storm. The secret Charlotte had witnessed had brought tears, yes, but it had also brought them closer together, had opened up conversations about resilience and kindness, and had shown Kate once again the remarkable children she was raising. In trying to protect her parents, Charlotte had revealed her own beautiful heart, and in sharing her burden, she had allowed her mother to show her that love, real, unconditional family love, was more powerful than any cruel words spoken in ignorance. As Kate finally closed her eyes, she thought not of the women in the garden or their hurtful words, but of butterflies and transformations, of children's laughter and the fierce protective love that would always guide her path as a mother. Tomorrow, she would begin implementing changes to better protect her children. But tonight, she simply held close the memory of Charlotte's hand in hers, and the whispered confidence that had brought them both to tears and, ultimately, to a deeper understanding of the strength that lay within their family bonds. The week following Kate's emotional conversation with Charlotte brought a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated changes to the royal household. William had canceled 2 engagements to spend more time with the children, and together, he and Kate had implemented new protocols for family attendance at public events. Their staff had been briefed, additional security measures put in place. Not the obvious kind with more guards, but subtle changes designed to create buffer zones where the children could move without risk of overhearing inappropriate conversations. But even as these practical measures were being implemented, Kate found herself watching Charlotte with new eyes. Her daughter moved through her days with the same grace and enthusiasm as before, but Kate now noticed the small moments of hesitation. The way Charlotte would sometimes pause before entering a room full of people, as if steeling herself for what she might encounter. It was during a routine school run that the next revelation came. Kate was driving Charlotte and George to school, a normal morning ritual that she cherished for its ordinariness. Louis was at home with his nanny, practicing his letters. The radio played softly in the background, and George was explaining his science project in enthusiastic detail. And then Mr. Henderson said we could use real volcanic rock. Mummy, real volcanic rock. Can you believe it? George's excitement was infectious, and Kate smiled at him through the rear-view mirror. That's wonderful, darling. Where will you get volcanic rock? The Natural History Museum has a learning kit we can borrow, George explained. Charlotte, you did volcanoes last year, didn't you? Was it brilliant? But Charlotte didn't respond. Kate glanced at her daughter in the passenger seat and saw that she was staring out the window, her expression distant and troubled. Charlotte, Kate prompted gently. George asked you a question, sweetheart. Charlotte startled slightly, as if pulled from deep thought. Sorry, what? Oh, volcanoes. Yes, they were interesting. Her response lacked its usual enthusiasm, and Kate felt a familiar flutter of concern. George, with the self-absorption typical of his age, had already moved on to describing his planned volcanic eruption demonstration. But Kate made a mental note to speak with Charlotte after school. Something was clearly troubling her daughter again. The school drop-off proceeded normally, with both children disappearing into their respective buildings after quick goodbye hugs. But as Kate drove home, she couldn't shake the image of Charlotte's troubled expression. She thought they had made progress after their conversation about the garden party incident, but perhaps the healing process would take longer than she'd hoped. That afternoon, Kate arrived at school early for pickup. She waited in the car, watching as children began streaming out of the buildings. George emerged first, his blazer askew and his hair ruffled, clearly having had an active day. He climbed into the car, chattering about volcanic temperatures and tectonic plates. Charlotte appeared a few minutes later, walking slowly, her usually perfect posture slightly slumped. As she approached the car, Kate noticed her daughter quickly wipe at her eyes before putting on a bright smile. "Hello, Mummy. How was your day?" Charlotte asked as she climbed in, her voice determinedly cheerful. Kate's heart sank. Her daughter was trying so hard to appear normal, to protect everyone for whatever was troubling her. "My day was lovely, darling. How was yours?" "Fine," Charlotte said quickly. Too quickly. "We had art class, and I painted a sunset." George, oblivious to the undercurrents, launched into a detailed comparison of sunsets versus volcanic eruptions as artistic subjects. Kate let him talk, but kept glancing at Charlotte, who had returned to staring out the window. Once they arrived home, and George had raced off to find his father and share more volcano facts, Kate gently touched Charlotte's arm. "Would you like to help me in the garden for a bit before homework time?" Charlotte looked up at her mother, and Kate could see the internal struggle in her eyes, the desire to confide warring with the instinct to protect. Finally, Charlotte nodded. The palace garden was peaceful in the late afternoon light. Kate led Charlotte to a quiet bench near the rose garden. Ironically, not far from where Charlotte had overheard the hurtful conversation weeks ago. But Kate had chosen the spot deliberately, wanting to reclaim it as a place of comfort rather than pain. They sat in silence for a moment, Kate waiting patiently for Charlotte to find her words. She had learned that pushing too hard would only make her sensitive daughter retreat further. "Something happened at school today," Charlotte finally said, her voice small. "And yesterday too. And actually for a while now." Kate felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice calm and encouraging. "What kind of something, darling?" Charlotte picked at a loose thread on her school jumper. "There's a girl in my class, Sophia. She's new this term, and at first I try to be friends with her because I remember how scary it was when I was new." Kate nodded, proud of her daughter's instinct to reach out to others. "That was very kind of you. But she knows things," Charlotte continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "about our family. Things that aren't true, but also things that are sort of true but twisted around to sound horrible." Kate's protective instincts flared, but she forced herself to remain calm. "What kind of things?" Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "She says her mother reads all the newspapers and magazines, and she tells Sophia everything about you and Daddy, about Uncle Harry, about everything. And then Sophia tells everyone at school." The tears were flowing freely now, and Kate pulled Charlotte into her arms. "Oh, my darling girl. She said that Daddy doesn't really love you, that it was all arranged like in the olden days. She said you trap him by being pretty and that you're not smart enough to be a real princess. She said that's why Granny, the queen, never really accepted you." Kate felt each word like a physical blow. These were not just the careless comments of adults overheard by accident. This was targeted, deliberate cruelty being directed at her 8-year-old daughter. "And today," Charlotte continued through her tears, "she brought a magazine to school. It had pictures of you from years ago, before you married Daddy. She showed everyone and said horrible things about how you dressed and how your family isn't grand enough. She made everyone laugh." Kate held Charlotte tighter, her own eyes burning with tears. The old photos, the constant scrutiny of her pre-royal life, the judgment of her middle-class background. These were wounds that had never fully healed. But to know that they were being weaponized against her daughter in a school playground was almost unbearable. "Did you tell your teacher?" Kate asked when she could trust her voice. Charlotte shook her head against Kate's shoulder. "I couldn't. Everyone would think I was being a tattletale princess. And Sophia's very clever. She never says these things when teachers are around. Only at break time or in the cloakrooms." Kate pulled back slightly to look at her daughter's tear-stained face. "Charlotte, this is bullying. And bullying is never okay, no matter how clever the person doing it thinks they are." "But what if some of it's true?" Charlotte asked, and the broken quality of her voice made Kate's heart shatter. "What if you really aren't good enough? What if people really do think those things?" Kate took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength she possessed. This was a crucial moment. How she handled this would shape Charlotte's understanding not just of their family, but of her own self-worth. Charlotte, I want you to listen to me very carefully, Kate said, her voice steady and sure. Some people will always have opinions about our family. Some of those opinions will be unkind, unfair, or simply untrue. That's part of the life we live, unfortunately. But here's what I need you to understand. Their opinions don't define who we are. Charlotte listened intently, her blue eyes fixed on her mother's face. When I fell in love with your father, Kate continued, I was just a normal girl. I went to university, I had friends, I wore high street clothes, and yes, sometimes they weren't perfect. I came from a loving family who worked hard and valued kindness above titles. And you know what? I'm proud of that. I'm proud of where I came from. But Sophia said Sophia is repeating things she doesn't understand, Kate interrupted gently. She's 8 years old, just like you, and she's learning these attitudes from adults who should know better. But, Charlotte, I need you to know something. Your father didn't marry me because I trapped him or because it was arranged. He married me because we fell in love. Real, true, sometimes difficult, but always worth it, love. Charlotte considered this. Like in fairy tales? Kate smiled sadly. Not quite like fairy tales, darling. Fairy tales tend to end when the princess marries the prince. But real life, our life, that's when the true story begins. And yes, it's been challenging sometimes. Yes, I've made mistakes and worn the wrong dress or said the wrong thing. But every single day, I wake up grateful for our family, for the love your father and I share, and most of all for you and your brothers. But why does Sophia hate us so much? Charlotte asked. I've never been mean to her. Kate sighed. This was perhaps the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, darling, people's unkindness has nothing to do with us and everything to do with them. Maybe Sophia is unhappy. Maybe she feels insecure or left out. Maybe she's repeating things she hears at home without understanding how hurtful they are. It doesn't excuse her behavior, but it might help explain it. They sat quietly for a moment, watching a robin hop along the garden path. Then, Charlotte asked the question Kate had been dreading. Is it always going to be like this? Are people always going to say mean things about us? Kate wished she could lie, wished she could promise her daughter that it would get easier, that people would become kinder. But she owed Charlotte honesty. Some people might always have unkind things to say, she admitted. But, Charlotte, what matters is not what they say, but how we choose to respond. We can let their words make us bitter and sad, or we can choose to rise above them. We can choose kindness even when others choose cruelty. We can choose to know our own worth even when others question it. That sounds very hard, Charlotte said quietly. It is hard, Kate agreed. Some days it will be the hardest thing in the world. But you know what makes it easier? Charlotte shook her head. Family, Kate said simply. Knowing that no matter what anyone says, we have each other. You have me and Daddy George and Louis. You have grandparents who adore you, aunts and uncles who would do anything for you. And, Charlotte, you have something else too. You have strength. Real strength. The kind that lets you be kind to a new girl even when she turns out to be unkind to you. The kind that lets you try to protect your family even when you're hurting. That's real princess behavior, my darling. Not the clothes or the titles or the palaces, but the kindness and the strength. Charlotte leaned against her mother, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft pastels that reminded Kate of Charlotte's sunset painting. What should I do about Sophia? Charlotte finally asked. Kate considered carefully. Her first instinct was to march into the school and demand action. But she also knew that Charlotte needed to learn how to navigate these situations herself with support. First, I think we should talk to Daddy about this. He might have some good ideas too. Then, I think we should speak with your teacher. Not as a tattletale, but because she needs to know what's happening so she can help. Bullying thrives in silence, Charlotte. When we speak up, we take away its power. Charlotte nodded slowly. Will you come with me to talk to Miss Henderson? Of course, darling. We're a team, remember? As they made their way back inside, Charlotte slipped her hand into Kate's. Mummy, I'm glad you told me about when you were younger. About being a normal girl who fell in love. I think that makes you even more special. Like you're a real princess, not just a pretend one from a story. Kate squeezed her daughter's hand, too moved to speak for a moment. When she found her voice, she said, "And you, my darling Charlotte, are the most real princess I know. Not because of your title, but because of your heart." That evening, after the children were in bed, Kate sat with William in their private sitting room and told him everything. She watched as his expression shifted from concern to anger to a protective fury that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him all those years ago. "This ends now," William said firmly. "I'll call the headmaster first thing tomorrow. No child should have to endure this, and certainly not in what should be a safe environment." Kate nodded, relieved to have his support. "I'm worried about the long-term impact on Charlotte. She's so sensitive, so aware of others' feelings. I don't want this to harden her heart." William moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "It won't. You know why? Because she has you as her mother. The way you handled that conversation, Kate, helping her understand without making her cynical, teaching her strength without bitterness, it was perfect." "It didn't feel perfect," Kate admitted. "I wanted to rage. I wanted to find this Sophia's mother and ask her how she could fill her child's head with such poison. I wanted to take Charlotte and run somewhere where no one would ever say an unkind word about her again. But you didn't," William pointed out. "You did something much harder and much more important. You taught her how to face the world with grace and strength, just like you've always done." Kate leaned into him, drawing comfort from his presence. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Raising them in this life?" William was quiet for a moment. "I wonder that every day. But then I see how they're turning out. Kind, thoughtful, strong. Yes, they face challenges other children don't. But they also have opportunities to make a real difference in the world. And with you as their mother, showing them how to navigate it all with integrity and grace, I think they're going to be extraordinary." The next morning brought a flurry of activity. William spoke with the headmaster while Kate met with Charlotte's teacher. The school took the matter seriously, implementing new policies about magazines and gossip and arranging for additional support for Charlotte. Sophia's parents were called in for a meeting, though Kate and William chose not to attend, feeling their presence might escalate the situation. But perhaps more importantly, Charlotte seemed lighter. The secret burden she had been carrying was now shared, and solutions were being put in place. She went to school with her head held high, armed with strategies for dealing with unkindness and the knowledge that she had her parents' full support. Over the following weeks, Kate noticed changes. Charlotte began to speak up more in family discussions, sharing her thoughts and opinions with new confidence. She started a kindness club at school, encouraging children to perform small acts of kindness for each other. When Sophia tried to spread more gossip, she found that fewer children were willing to listen, Charlotte's quiet dignity having won more hearts than cruel words ever could. One afternoon, Kate was surprised to receive a request from Charlotte's teacher. Could she come in to speak with the class about kindness and resilience? Charlotte had suggested it, apparently, thinking her classmates might benefit from hearing her mother's perspective. Kate agreed, though the prospect terrified her more than any state banquet or official engagement. Speaking to a room full of 8-year-olds about something so personal felt far more daunting than addressing dignitaries. The day of the talk, Charlotte gave her an encouraging hug before school. "Just be yourself, Mummy. That's when you're the best." Standing before the class, looking at all those young faces, including Sophia's carefully neutral expression, Kate took a deep breath and began to speak. Not as a princess, but as a mother, as someone who had learned hard lessons about kindness and courage. She told them about the power of words, how they could hurt or heal. She spoke about choosing kindness even when it was difficult, about the strength it took to be gentle in a sometimes harsh world. She shared age-appropriate stories about overcoming challenges and finding courage in difficult moments. Being kind doesn't mean being weak, she told them. In fact, it takes tremendous strength to choose kindness when others choose cruelty. It takes courage to stand up for what's right, to refuse to participate in gossip or meanness, to reach out to someone who might be struggling. She saw Charlotte sitting straight and proud, a small smile on her face. Other children were leaning forward, engaged and interested. Even Sophia seemed to be listening, though she kept her eyes on her desk. Each of you has the power to make your corner of the world a little brighter, Kate concluded. You can choose to be someone who lifts others up or tears them down. You can choose to spread kindness or cruelty. I hope you'll choose kindness, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And because a world where we're kind to each other is a much more beautiful place to live. The class applauded, and Miss Henderson thanked her warmly. As Kate prepared to leave, she was surprised when Sophia approached her, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Your Highness," the girl said quietly. I'm sorry about the things I said. My mom, she says things and I thought, but I was wrong. Charlotte's always been nice to me, even when I wasn't nice back." Kate knelt down to Sophia's eye level, her heart softening. "Thank you for saying that, Sophia. It takes courage to apologize. And you know what? We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and try to do better." Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes, and Kate gently squeezed her shoulder before standing. As she left the classroom, she caught Charlotte's eye. Her daughter was beaming, not with triumph, but with something much more valuable: understanding and compassion. That evening, as Kate tucked Charlotte into bed, her daughter said something that would stay with her forever. "Mummy, I've been thinking. Maybe everything that happened, the mean things people said, Sophia being unkind, maybe it all happened for a reason. Because now I understand better. I understand how words can hurt, so I'll be more careful with mine. I understand how it feels to be treated unfairly, so I'll try harder to be fair. And I understand that being a real princess isn't about being perfect. It's about being kind and strong and trying to make things better." Kate kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom in such a young heart. "You're absolutely right, my darling. And you know what? I think you're already the kind of princess the world needs more of." As she turned out the light and left Charlotte's room, Kate reflected on the journey they had taken together over the past weeks. What had begun with tears and hurt had transformed into something powerful: a deeper understanding between mother and daughter, a stronger sense of self for Charlotte, and a renewed commitment to raising children who would choose kindness in a world that often rewarded the opposite. The challenges would keep coming, Kate knew. There would be more Sophias, more overheard conversations, more magazine articles, and more moments when the weight of public scrutiny would feel unbearable. But there would also be more opportunities to teach resilience, more chances to model grace under pressure, and more moments when her children would surprise her with their strength and wisdom. Walking past the window that overlooked the garden, Kate paused. The moon was full, casting silver light over the roses and hedges where so much had transpired. She thought about the journey from that first overheard conversation to Charlotte standing proud in her classroom, from tears of hurt to actions of compassion. This was the reality of raising royal children. Not the fairy tale of tiaras and ball gowns, but the complex navigation of privilege and scrutiny, opportunity and challenge. It was messy and painful and beautiful and rewarding, often all at once. And as Kate made her way to her own room, where William was waiting to hear about the school talk, she felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for the palaces or the titles or the glamorous life that others envied, but for the simple privilege of guiding her children through life's challenges, of watching them grow stronger and kinder with each test they faced. Charlotte had witnessed cruelty and chosen compassion. She had experienced hurt and chosen healing. She had faced the harsh reality that not everyone would treat her fairly, and she had chosen to rise above it with grace. And in doing so, she had taught her mother something valuable too: that sometimes the greatest triumphs come not from avoiding life's difficulties, but from facing them with courage, kindness, and the unshakable support of family love. The tears Kate had shed that morning weeks ago, when Charlotte first revealed what she had overheard, had been tears of pain. But now, reflecting on all that had transpired since, Kate realized they had also been tears of transformation. For both mother and daughter, They had marked the beginning of a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to be strong, to be kind, and to be unashamedly, authentically themselves in a world that would always be watching. The Christmas season arrived at Kensington Palace with its usual flurry of preparation and tradition. The halls were decorated with evergreen garlands and twinkling lights, and the children's excitement was palpable as they helped arrange decorations and plan their wish lists. For Kate, this time of year had always held special significance, a chance to create magical memories for her children while honoring both royal traditions and the simpler customs from her own childhood. But this year felt different. In the months since Charlotte's revelations about the garden party and the school bullying, Kate had watched her daughter bloom with new confidence. The kindness club at school had grown, Sophia had gradually become a friend rather than an antagonist, and Charlotte seemed to have found her voice in standing up for what was right. It was 3 weeks before Christmas when Charlotte approached Kate with an unusual request. The family was gathered in the sitting room for their evening routine. William reviewing papers, George reading about ancient civilizations, Louis building an ambitious tower with blocks, and Kate helping Charlotte with her piano practice. "Mummy," Charlotte said, turning from the piano bench, "I've been thinking about something." Kate set aside the sheet music, giving her daughter her full attention. She had learned that Charlotte's thoughtful announcements often led to profound conversations. "What have you been thinking about, darling?" Charlotte glanced at her father and brothers before continuing. "You know how at Christmas we always do the walk to church, and lots of people come to see us?" Kate nodded. The Christmas Day walk to St. Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate was a long-standing royal tradition, drawing crowds of well-wishers who gathered to catch a glimpse of the royal family and exchange Christmas greetings. "Well," Charlotte continued, her voice gaining strength, "I heard Mrs. Thompson, she's the lunch lady at school, talking about how her daughter is in the hospital. She has something wrong with her heart, and they're going to spend Christmas there. And it made me think about all the children who can't be home for Christmas." William had set down his papers and was listening intently now. George had also looked up from his book, and even Louis had paused in his building project. "That's very thoughtful of you to think about those children," Kate said gently. "But I want to do more than think about them," Charlotte said earnestly. "I want to do something. Could we visit them? The children in the hospital? Not for cameras or because we have to, but just because it might make them happy." Kate and William exchanged glances, a whole conversation passing between them in that look. They had always tried to shield their children from the more performative aspects of royal duties, wanting them to understand service as genuine care rather than obligation. "That's a wonderful idea, Charlotte," William said. "But you understand it wouldn't be a regular visit? There would need to be security arrangements, and the hospital would need to prepare." "I know," Charlotte interrupted, then caught herself. "Sorry for interrupting, Daddy. I know it would be complicated, but couldn't we make it work? We could bring presents and maybe sing carols. George plays the guitar now, and I could play piano if they have one, and Louis could make them laugh. He's good at that." "Hey," Louis protested. "I can do more than make people laugh. I could draw pictures too." "That's perfect," Charlotte said quickly. "You could draw pictures for the children." George had fully abandoned his book now. "We could research what kinds of gifts would be appropriate for different ages and conditions. I read that some children in hospitals can't have certain types of toys because of germs." Kate felt her eyes filling with tears, happy ones this time. Her children were planning together, thinking of others, wanting to use their position to bring joy rather than simply enjoying its privileges. "I think it's a beautiful idea," she said. "But I want you all to understand something. If we do this, it's not about us. It's about those children and their families. Some of them might be very sick. Some might be scared or sad. It might be difficult to see." Charlotte nodded solemnly. "I know, Mummy. But that's why it's important, isn't it? Because if it's difficult for us just to see, imagine how difficult it is for them to live it." Out of the mouths of babes, Kate thought. She looked at William again and saw her own pride reflected in his eyes. "Let's look into it," William said. "We'll need to speak with the hospital, make arrangements. But If we can make it work, I think it's a wonderful way to share the Christmas spirit. The children buzzed with excitement for the rest of the evening, making plans and suggestions. George started a list of gift ideas organized by age group. Charlotte practiced simple carols that would be easy to sing along with. Louis drew practice pictures of cheerful Christmas scenes. Over the next 2 weeks, Kate and William worked with their staff to arrange the visit. They chose the Royal London Hospital's Children's Ward, where young patients with various conditions would be spending the holiday season. The visit would be private. No media, no official photographers, just the family bringing Christmas cheer to those who needed it most. Kate involved the children in every aspect of the preparation. They went shopping together for gifts, carefully selecting items that would be suitable for children in hospital. Charlotte insisted on using some of her saved pocket money to buy extra presents. George researched each type of childhood illness they might encounter, so he could understand what the patients were experiencing. Louis practiced his very best behavior and drew dozens of pictures to give away. The night before the visit, Kate found Charlotte in her room, carefully wrapping one more gift. A small teddy bear she had bought with her own money. "This is for someone special," Charlotte explained. "In case we meet a child who looks extra sad. Sometimes a hug helps, but if they can't have real hugs because they're too sick, maybe a teddy bear hug would work." Kate sat on the bed beside her daughter, watching her careful fingers tie a ribbon around the package. "Charlotte, I want you to know how proud I am of you. This whole idea came from your kind heart." Charlotte looked up at her mother. "Do you remember what you told me? About choosing kindness even when it's hard?" "Well, I've been thinking that we have so much, not just things, but love and health and each other. It seems like the least we can do is share some of that, especially at Christmas." Kate hugged her daughter close. "You're absolutely right. And you know what? I think this visit is going to mean as much to us as it does to them." The morning of December 23rd dawned crisp and clear. The family dressed carefully, festive but not overly formal, wanting to appear approachable rather than intimidating. Charlotte wore a red dress with a Christmas pudding pin that she had chosen specifically because she thought it would make the children smile. George had on a sweater with a reindeer pattern, and Louis proudly sported a tie covered in snowmen that he had picked out himself. The drive to the hospital was filled with nervous energy. Kate could see Charlotte clutching her special wrapped teddy bear, George reviewing his mental notes about being sensitive to different medical conditions, and Louis practicing his indoor voice. "Remember," William said as they pulled up to the private entrance, "we're just a family visiting other families at Christmas. Be yourselves, but be gentle. Follow the nurse's guidance. And if anyone seems tired or overwhelmed, we give them space." The head of pediatrics, Dr. Sarah Marshall, met them at the entrance. She was a warm woman with kind eyes who immediately put the children at ease. "We're so grateful you're here," she said. "The children are very excited. We haven't told them exactly who's coming, just that some special visitors want to wish them happy Christmas. I think the surprise will be wonderful for them." She led them through cheerfully decorated corridors to the children's ward. Kate could feel Charlotte's hand slip into hers, seeking reassurance or perhaps offering it. As they approached the ward doors, they could hear the sound of children's voices and a television playing Christmas cartoons. "Ready?" Dr. Marshall asked. The family nodded, and the doors opened. The first thing Kate noticed was how the staff had tried to make the ward festive despite the medical equipment. Paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling. There were Christmas drawings on the walls, and a small artificial tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments. The second thing she noticed was the sudden hush as children and parents realized who had just walked in. "Hello, everyone," William said warmly. "We heard there were some very brave children here who might like some Christmas visitors." For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, a small voice piped up from one of the beds. "Are you the real Prince William?" "I am," William said, moving toward the child's bed. "And this is my family. We wanted to come wish you all a happy Christmas." The ice broken. The ward came alive with excitement. Children who were able to sit up did so. Parents smiled with surprise and delight, and the nurses beamed at seeing their young patients so animated. Charlotte, after a moment of shyness, approached a little girl who looked about her age. The girl had a bandage around her head and was holding a worn stuffed rabbit. "I like your rabbit," Charlotte said softly. "What's his name?" "Mr. Hoppy," the girl replied, her voice small but pleased. "He's been with me for all my operations." "He must be very brave then," Charlotte said. "Just like you." "I am Charlotte." "What's her name?" "Emma," the girl said, smiling now. "Are you really a princess?" Charlotte sat carefully on the edge of Emma's bed. "I am, but that's not the important bit. The important bit is that it's almost Christmas, and I brought you something." She handed Emma one of the wrapped gifts. Kate watched with a full heart as her children spread throughout the ward. George was enthusiastically discussing dinosaurs with a boy in a wheelchair, having discovered a shared interest. Louis was showing his drawings to anyone who would look, making silly faces that had the younger children giggling. William was speaking with parents, offering words of encouragement and admiration for their strength. But it was Charlotte who truly shone. She moved from bed to bed with natural grace, somehow knowing which children needed gentle conversation and which ones wanted to laugh and play. She held hands with those who reached out, admired the drawings and crafts the children had made, and listened with genuine interest to their stories. At one bed, Charlotte found a boy who turned his face away when she approached. He looked about 10 years old, and Kate could see various machines monitoring his condition. "I'll leave you alone if you'd like," Charlotte said softly. "But I brought something that might cheer you up if you want it." The boy turned slightly. "You don't have to pretend to care. I know this is just something you have to do." Charlotte was quiet for a moment, and Kate started to move closer, ready to intervene. But Charlotte spoke again, her voice steady and sincere. "Actually, nobody made us come. It was my idea. I know someone whose daughter is in hospital for Christmas, and it made me sad thinking about all the children who can't be home. So I asked my parents if we could visit. I wanted to come because I think being in hospital at Christmas must be really hard, and maybe having visitors would make it a tiny bit better." The boy fully turned to look at her now, studying her face as if trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "Really?" he asked. "Really," Charlotte confirmed. "And if you don't want to talk, that's okay too. But I brought you a present just in case." She placed a wrapped gift on his bedside table. "Happy Christmas." She started to move away, but the boy called out, "Wait, I'm sorry. I'm tired of people feeling sorry for me. I am James." Charlotte returned to his bedside. "Nice to meet you, James. And I don't feel sorry for you. I think you must be incredibly strong to deal with all this." She gestured to the medical equipment. "I don't like needles at all. I bet you've had loads, haven't you?" James cracked a small smile. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. See? Incredibly strong. I'd have fainted after the first one," Charlotte said, making James actually laugh. They chatted for several more minutes, and Kate watched Charlotte carefully take her special teddy bear from her bag and hand it to James. "This is for the extra difficult days," she said quietly. "When you need something to squeeze that won't mind how hard you hold on." James took the bear, his tough exterior crumbling slightly. "Thank you," he whispered. The visit continued for over 2 hours. The family sang carols, with Charlotte playing a keyboard the staff had brought in. George organized an impromptu quiz game that had everyone laughing. Louis distributed his drawings with the seriousness of an artist at a gallery opening. William helped one father video call relatives so they could see the royal visit, bringing Christmas cheer to an extended family far away. Kate found herself drawn to the parents, offering words of comfort and admiration. She spoke with mothers who hadn't left their children's bedsides in days, fathers who were trying to stay strong while their hearts were breaking, and grandparents who had stepped in to help. Their strength and dedication humbled her. "You're all amazing," she told one exhausted-looking mother whose daughter was recovering from heart surgery. "The love and strength you show every day, it's extraordinary." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Some days I don't feel strong at all," she admitted. "Some days I just want to scream at how unfair it all is." "That's being human," Kate said gently. "Strength isn't about not feeling those things. It's about feeling them and still showing up for your child every day," which is exactly what you're doing. As the visit drew to a close, Dr. Marshall gathered everyone who was able in the common area. Charlotte had one more surprise. She had written a special Christmas card for the ward, which she read aloud. To all the brave children at Royal London Hospital, she read, her clear voice carrying through the room. Christmas is about love and hope and family. Even though you can't be home this year, you're surrounded by people who care about you. Your families, the amazing doctors and nurses, and now us too. You're in our thoughts and prayers, and we think you're all incredible. We hope the new year brings you health and happiness and lots of reasons to smile. Happy Christmas from the Cambridge family. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including among the royal family themselves. As they prepared to leave, hugs were exchanged with those who wanted them, final presents were distributed, and promises were made to remember each child in their prayers. Emma, the little girl Charlotte had first approached, called out as they were leaving. "Princess Charlotte, will you come back and visit?" Charlotte looked at her parents, then back at Emma. "I hope so. And until then, you keep being brave, okay?" The journey home was quiet, each family member processing the emotional experience. Louis had fallen asleep, clutching one of the thank you card the child had made for him. George was staring out the window, unusually subdued. Charlotte sat between her parents, her head leaning against Kate's shoulder. "That was harder than I thought it would be," Charlotte said finally. "Seeing them all so sick. James especially. Will he be okay, do you think?" Kate stroked her daughter's hair. "I don't know, darling. We can hope and pray, but sometimes we just don't know." "It doesn't seem fair," Charlotte said. "We have so much, and they're fighting just to get better." William reached over to take Charlotte's hand. "You're right, it isn't fair. But what you did today, bringing joy to those children, making them forget about being sick for a little while, that matters more than you know." "The teddy bear you gave James," Kate added. "Did you see his face? That wasn't just a toy to him. It was hope. It was someone caring. It was connection." Charlotte was quiet for a moment. "I want to do more. Can we do more?" "We can," William assured her. "This doesn't have to be a one-time thing. We can find ways to help, to support the hospital, to remember these children." That evening, as Kate tucked Charlotte into bed, her daughter seemed different somehow. Older, more aware of the world's complexities, but also more determined to make a difference. "Mummy," Charlotte said, as Kate turned out the light, "remember when those ladies at the garden party said those mean things about us?" Kate's stomach tightened. "Yes, darling. Well, I was thinking. They said we weren't good enough, that we didn't belong. But today, being with those children, seeing how just our being there made them happy. I think maybe being good enough isn't about what some people think. It's about what we do with what we have. Does that make sense?" Kate sat back down on the bed, taking Charlotte's hand. "It makes perfect sense, and you're absolutely right. Those children don't care about any of the things those ladies were talking about," Charlotte continued. "They just cared that someone wanted to spend time with them, that someone thought they were worth visiting. That's what really matters, isn't it?" "Yes, my darling. That's exactly what matters." Charlotte smiled in the dim light. "Then I think we're doing okay. Our family, I mean. We're not perfect, but we're trying to do good things. And that's enough." Kate kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart full to bursting. "You, Charlotte, are more than enough. You're extraordinary." As she left Charlotte's room, Kate found William waiting in the hallway. He had clearly been listening, and his eyes were suspiciously bright. "She's incredible," he said simply. "She is," Kate agreed. "They all are. Today showed me that we're raising children who understand what really matters." They checked on George, who was already asleep with a book about medical innovations open on his chest, clearly inspired by the day's visit. Louis was sprawled across his bed, still clutching his thank you card, a smile on his sleeping face. Back in their own room, Kate and William talked long into the night about the day's events and what they meant for their family going forward. The visit had been Charlotte's idea, but it had touched them all profoundly. "She's found her voice," Kate said. "After everything with the garden party and the bullying, she's channeled it into something beautiful. She's choosing to use her position to bring light to others." "She gets that from you," William said. "The way you've guided her through these challenges, helped her understand that strength comes from kindness, not from armor. Kate thought about the journey of the past months, from Charlotte's tears over overheard cruelty to her confident compassion in the hospital ward. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when Kate had questioned whether they were handling things correctly. But seeing Charlotte today, watching her natural empathy and genuine care for others, she knew they were on the right path. The Christmas Eve service at Sandringham took on new meaning that year. As the family sang carols and prayed together, Kate knew that Charlotte was thinking of Emma and James and all the children in the hospital. When they prayed for the sick and suffering, it wasn't abstract. It was personal. On Christmas morning, amid the joy of presents and family traditions, Charlotte quietly asked if they could call the hospital to wish the children happy Christmas. It wasn't possible, of course, but the request touched Kate deeply. Her daughter's heart had been permanently expanded by the experience. A few days after Christmas, a package arrived at Kensington Palace addressed to Charlotte. Inside was a hand-drawn card from James, the boy who had initially rejected her visit. The drawing showed a stick-figure princess and a teddy bear, with wobbly letters spelling out, "Thank you for caring. Happy Christmas, James." Charlotte held the card like it was the most precious thing she'd ever received. "Can we frame this, Mummy? I want to remember." As Kate helped Charlotte frame the card for her room, she reflected on the unexpected journey they had taken. What had begun with tears over cruel words overheard at a garden party had transformed into something beautiful. Charlotte had taken her pain and turned it into purpose, her hurt into healing for others. The secret Charlotte had witnessed, the unkindness of adults who should have known better, had initially threatened to damage her innocent view of the world. But with guidance, love, and her own remarkable strength, she had chosen a different path. She had chosen to be someone who brought joy rather than judgment, who offered kindness rather than criticism. Looking at her daughter carefully arranging the framed card on her bookshelf, right next to her favorite books and treasures, Kate felt a profound sense of hope. The world could be cruel, yes. People could be unkind, but it could also be filled with moments of pure grace, like a princess and a sick boy connecting over a teddy bear, like children forgetting their illness to sing carols, like families finding strength in the midst of struggle. "Mummy," Charlotte said, stepping back to admire the framed card, "I think I know what I want to be when I grow up." "What's that, darling?" "Someone who helps people. I don't know how exactly, maybe like the doctors at the hospital, or maybe in a different way. But I want to be someone who makes difficult things a little bit easier for others." Kate pulled her daughter into a hug. "I think you're already well on your way to being exactly that." Later, as the family gathered for their evening meal, Charlotte shared James's card with her brothers. George immediately wanted to know more about James's condition and whether there were new treatments being developed. Lewis declared that he would make James the best drawing in the whole world to send back. William caught Kate's eye across the table, and she saw her own thoughts reflected there. Their children were growing up in a unique position with privileges and pressures that few could understand. But they were also growing up with hearts oriented towards service, with an understanding that their position came with responsibility to help others. The conversation that had begun with Charlotte's tears had evolved into something none of them could have anticipated. It had become a catalyst for growth, for understanding, for finding purpose in the midst of privilege. The secret Charlotte had witnessed had ultimately revealed not the ugliness of the world, but the beauty of choosing to respond to ugliness with grace. As the family continued their meal, discussing plans for New Year and the possibility of more hospital visits, Kate found herself thinking about the women at that long-ago garden party. She wondered if they knew the impact their careless words had ultimately had. Not the impact they had intended to wound and diminish, but the actual impact, spurring a young princess to understand her true worth and to use her position to bring light to dark places. It was, Kate thought, perhaps the most perfect example of good coming from bad that she had ever witnessed. And it had all started with a little girl brave enough to share her hurt with her mother, and a mother who had chosen to help her transform that hurt into something beautiful. The candles flickered on the dinner table, casting warm light on the faces of her family. Charlotte was laughing at something Lewis had said. George was explaining something scientific to his father, and William was listening with patient interest. It was an ordinary moment in many ways, the kind of family dinner that happened in homes across the country. But Kate knew better. She knew the journey they had taken to get here, the tears that had been shed, the lessons that had been learned. She knew that her daughter had faced cruelty and chosen kindness, had experienced hurt and chosen healing, had seen the worst of human nature and decided to be part of the best. And in that knowledge, Kate found a deep, abiding peace. Charlotte had indeed witnessed something no child should have to witness. But in the end, what she had truly seen through the love of her family and her own remarkable heart was that she had the power to make the world a little bit better, one act of kindness at a time.